Right. Yeah. Alright, looks like it's 5:30, folks. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a moment of silent prayer for our country and for this council that's sitting here this evening and people in the audience. Amen. Okay, it is Tuesday, July 27th. We are in the Town Bath Municipal Center. Could I have the roll call, please?
Scott Murphy.
Here.
Rick Weber.
Yep.
Greg Forney.
Here.
Rose Jackson. Beth Skinner. Here. Chris Chapman.
Here.
And Susan Masters here.
Okay, we got a quorum. Could I have the review of the minutes from council meeting 7/13/21? I will take any corrections or additions and common consent, please. If everybody's looked through it, if everybody has looked through it, it looked okay to
Call
me.
my correction.
Everything good for everybody? Common consent? Okay. Okay, okay, that was all we had for meetings. So we're gonna move on to persons before council, and I don't see Chuck out there, so we'll move on real quick. We got Lynn Dunham and Ed Martin here for the 7-1-3U agreement. They're going to let us know about this agreement, that we had some questions from last meeting, and if we could speak up into this, kind of into the speaker so people can hear. We're trying to work on getting a clearer to everybody that's out here on our YouTube channel. So you all have the floor.
Okay, the question had come up from about, that you had some questions relating to the 713U. So I went ahead and called Ed Martin, who works under Brian Fulkus, who's
Right.
been here before.
Right.
For West Virginia Conservation Agency. And he can explain. Lynn Dunham's not going to explain it to you.
Oh, darn, I'm not gonna get to that.
No, Ed's going to do that.
Okay, well then, Ed, you have the floor.
I will do my best to explain. I have some copies of the 713U as well as code 713U. You all have those still. Does anybody need a copy?
Yeah, we've got it here, I think, in our packets. Yeah.
So I guess I would start off, my understanding is you all had some questions, and I'm gonna go ahead and stand up if that's okay.
That's fine, that's fine,
All right.
that's fine.
Do you want me to give you my version of the 713U, my kind of definition, and then you guys can give me some questions?
That would be great, that
Okay.
way we we're on the same page and we know what's good, kind of
I
going
don't
on.
think
So,
we know enough to ask good questions right now.
Okay.
You know.
Well, so 713U, the reason we call that a 713U agreement is because of code 713U. It grants counties, municipalities the authority to enter streams to basically do flood mitigation work. Our agency, the Conservation Agency, does not have authority to enter the stream outside of a governor's declaration. That authority was given to counties and municipalities. So that the reason we call them a 713U agreement is we enter into a partnership / agreement with counties, cities, other entities, the district, to basically come together and work on projects that we agree that we can work together on. The 713U blanket agreement, it is a very general document. It does not hold anybody to any particular standard. It just says, we're going to work together where we agree we can work together. It basically states that there are going to be areas where we do work together and areas we don't. Then for every project that would be done underneath this blanket agreement, there would be a sub-agreement. Each sub-agreement would be different. The funding formula will be different. There may be something that the town of Bath or the Morgan County Commission comes to us with, that they need some help on a project and you guys feel really strongly about it, but it doesn't quite fit into under our umbrella. And so the funding formula, you guys may have to absorb more cost on something like that. There may be a project that we come to you all on and you're all like, well, we'd like to see it done, but we really don't have any money to put into this. So, you know, you may have other mechanisms of bringing something to the table other than just finances. There's in-kind services, contracting services, land rights, things like that, finding laydown areas for sediment disposal. If it's maybe related to a flood or something like that, there's a lot of woody debris. You guys might be able to find a location for disposal of that woody debris. All these things have a monetary value without actually expending cash. So there's a way that we can enter into some of these agreements, and for cash-strapped entities around the state, they can still bring something to the table without just bringing cash out of, you know, that's not the system.
Right.
So hopefully that gives you all kind of an idea of what the idea behind the 713 agreement is. Signing it and getting it started, all it does is basically gets the groundwork laid for sub-agreements down the road. It doesn't hold anybody to anything, and I believe it actually states in here that with a particular amount of notice, anybody can withdraw from the agreement at any time. But I just think you have to try, and don't hold me to this, I think it's 30 days maybe.
But I thought I read 30 days.
Right, so it is a mechanism for us to be able to get into streams, to do work with counties, with cities, outside of the declaration. And it is a way for all entities to pool resources, because it doesn't just have to be between the town of Bath and the district and the conservation agency. It can be, you can pull the county in. You might have a project that's on a county line. You might get a couple of counties. DOH could be pulled in to the agreement. And so it's a way to pool resources and buy down costs for everybody and try to get something positive for the community addressed.
Right, so this doesn't actually hold us to any monetary,
No.
you know, that was my main concern. I don't want to put the town on the hook for any type of monetary expenditures that, you know, all of a sudden we'd start seeing a bill for or something
No.
on that agreement. That was my major concern.
Any cost would be associated with the sub-agreements, and that would change under every sub-agreement. And that's, for lack of a better term, instead of sub-agreement, we'd say project. Every project is gonna have a different funding formula. It's gonna be
An
different.
example of a couple of different kinds of projects that you've seen this agreement work.
Well, we've actually worked with some counties, under EWP, which is Emergency Watershed Protection, where the counties actually administered the work during the flood. And we worked under agreement with the county, and we had, so instead of multiple entities going to FEMA and trying to seek reimbursement, it was just the county that ultimately sought. It was a little cleaner that way. One entity going through FEMA. I don't know if you all have ever had to deal with FEMA reimbursement during a disaster, but when you have multiple entities, it's a little cumbersome. That's one particular project. We had a project in Marshall County where a bridge was damaged during the flood, and so we got together with Marshall County, West Virginia VOAD that does bridge repairs, NRCS came to the table with design work, and we worked with the county to stabilize I think it was a couple hundred feet of stream bank with riprap and get that new bridge installed, which was serving about 5 or 6 houses on the other side of the stream, and all they had was a low water crossing that when the water was up, they couldn't get in there. So those are two pretty good examples. We worked with Randolph County on some EWP work as well.
Usually emergency things.
No, the idea is that it is not mostly emergency things, but that is also could be utilized. And so far, we have used it under emergency situations a few times. But the situation with Marshall County was not an emergency. It was caused by one, but I don't know if you all have ever worked with GOAT. It takes a long time to get a bridge replacement done. So this was months and months after a disaster. So no, the idea would be to maybe actually do this ahead of a disaster, so that we could be proactive instead of reactive. I think that is ultimately what we'd like to see.
So this is just opening the door for potential projects down the road.
Right, and saving time if emergency
Right.
situation would arise, or saving time if there's a project that's identified. One of the things we really like about this is we would like for it to be locally driven. Nobody knows what needs to be put on the ground in the town of Bath or in Morgan County better than the local government. So as opposed to us coming in and saying, hey, this is a project we want to put on the ground, we'd really like the locals to come to us and say, this is a project we would really need to see. We have local support. So we really want to see it locally driven.
And you can also, your people supply engineering help to,
Sure.
without having to go out, hire some do engineering out there.
Potentially, we NRCS provide engineering services. We don't have an engineer on staff that has a stamp. So for a lot of projects, you want that stamp.
Right.
We provide, in addition to funding, and it's like I said, it's not always 100% funding for a project. It may be 50%, maybe 25 or 30% or whatever. But in addition, we'll provide technical support, technical expertise, oversight for contracting, things like that, boots on the ground, in addition to, funding assistance.
Yeah, but what about financial from the state of West Virginia? Does this support getting funding from the state or going to the state legislature?
Well, the funding that we put on the ground on our end does come from the legislature. So we have programs that are out there, and on a particular program or project sub-agreement, we might have to go to the legislature and actually request funding on a really large project. And we're, like everyone else, we have a budget that we have to work within. And so this may not always be a quick process, but it's certainly a way for us to, like I said, buy down costs for everyone, I think. So,
We have a project going on, Berkeley Springs State Park that entails replacing a bridge or repairing a bridge and like that. Is this something that could possibly be helpful?
potentially, like I said, one of the things that we look at is it has to fit within the scope of what the conservation agency, what the conservation district, what our goals are. So soil conservation is one of it. Flood mitigation or preventing flooding is one of them. So for our participation, it's really got to fit in that kind of in that corridor. So
Could very well be, couldn't it be?
we're open to
Yeah.
hear.
Like underneath the bridge on 522 down here where all the sediment is. I mean, that sooner or later is going to have to be addressed because of how much sediment is actually laying there compared to what it was years ago. So, we were just talking about that a couple minutes ago before you came in. So, that's what I'm kind of looking at this agreement to maybe try to start working on or doing something that we can alleviate our flood potential, get more water downstream and get it out of our community so that we do not flood.
Right.
And that's what the park project's trying to do with the new bridge and all that kind of stuff too. So, and anybody else have any questions?
This is a 5-year agreement, but it looks like an entity could terminate in 30 days. It's 5 years. So actually, it's a 30-day agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
In actuality.
So I mean, that's.
And, the agreement may sit on the shelf, signed, and never, no sub-agreements are ever put into, or implemented. That would be a shame. I would hope that, there would be enough projects out there that people are looking to get on the ground, that we surely would find something that everybody agrees
Right.
needs to be completed. But,
I don't see anything wrong with it. And let's see,
Well,
right
now
in the
that my
chat
answer,
today,
Our big question was when we got to page 4 where it says number 2, the town of Bath wishes to pay its portion of the cost share funding.
Yeah,
We were thinking of like,
what,
okay, how much are we liable for here?
That's determined.
Right, I understand.
per project
right,
and per what we can do.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't be committed to, you know, X number of dollars if you don't have X number of dollars in your budget.
right. And that was the main concern. I mean, our budget was very tight. You know, I didn't want to put this community or the town on line for, you know, X amount of dollars. And that's why we wanted to have clarification. I think that was my main
Yeah.
concern there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anybody else. Chris, do you have anything else to
Yeah, I just had a question. Under section 6, it talks about projects. It says a committee representing WVCA and the town of Bath will meet to discuss the town of Bath's potential list to determine project suitability and funding them. Is there a timeline for once this is signed for these things to happen? Or what will be the process from here? Once we sign it, what?
Well, the next step would be for, as I said, we really want this to be locally driven. So the next step would be, and in here, you would identify administrative officers, you that, and it identifies the technical folks. So in my
Okay.
shop, it's Gene Solvern he's my boss. He's the guy that you all would be dealing with on the projects, either he or Brian Parkus. But once you all had a list of sites that you wanted us, so it could be one site, or you guys might say, hey, well, here's 5 sites that we've looked at and we'd like to do something with if we can, then we would, you know, take a look at those sites. We have whoever your representative is gonna be, as well as ours, the district, if they're gonna be involved in the project.
Right.
Go out and take a look and see what we can come up with.
And the
Right.
county also.
And
It might-
County also.
Right, yeah, the county would have to be involved in a couple of projects that I'm actually.
It's a
thinking about,
good-
so.
You know, you've got somebody to partner with that has some
Right.
expertise of streams, you know, and to me, it sounds like a good thing. For the town, for the
Right.
county, gives the sponsors somebody to connect with at the state level that maybe possibly help them.
It sounds okay to me.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we sign the 7-1-3U agreement between West Virginia Conservation Agency and the town of Bath concerning stream restoration, bank stabilization, and blockage removal work.
Motion second on the floor to accept and sign the agreement, 7-1-3U agreement. Any discussion, any more discussion, should I say? All right, I'll ask the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Now, is
Ed,
there a
what's your last
resolution
name?
in
Mark.
here that
Ed, Mark.
pertains to this also?
I don't know if
No.
there's a
No, there
resolution.
wasn't a resolution. Did you have
Yeah,
that
It's just this here, and I'll sign the original agreement and get it back. Thank you very much for clarifying that for us. You know, we just needed clarification so that we knew exactly what we were working with.
No, I understand.
There will probably be a few projects. I've got a few in the back of my head right now that I want to see about trying to get, you know, solutions to for some of the flooding underneath of our bridges and stuff here in town. So,
Well, and I think it may work that maybe the state park project.
Right.
It may be very helpful.
yeah,
With the, you know, they're replacing one bridge and there's more
Repair
than one bridge
wall.
there and.
all that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
so-
And it
absolutely.
could be places going up through town.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, south.
Right.
All right. Well, we're grateful.
Well, thank you. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you coming down here and speaking with us.
No problem. My pleasure.
Mayor Scott, I would like to thank Jim Michael. You know, Warm Springs Watershed, the 8 dams, is one of the first in the state. And we're proud of that as we watch it operate over the years.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the same way with the other work in the area, county. And so it's a pleasure to have this continued program working together.
We'll
Thank
make
you.
it work. Thank you. You all have a good evening.
Take care.
Okay, Sean,
Sorry, I'm late.
that's all right. You're here.
I had a delivery that was 2 days late coming from Texas, and I had to meet the shipper there.
Been there, done that one.
He ran into some issues. So
All right, well,
my
man, you're up here, so,
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming down. Appreciate it.
We told you 20 minutes. You're good.
Okay, I wouldn't have even known unless you said.
So I'm good. I have the floor.
Yep,
Yes,
you
sir.
have the floor.
So I have many. For those that don't know, I've been working on some water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure improvements in Morgan County. Mainly given if you look at Morgan County to scale with other similar comparable counties, or public utilities are very underutilized in the sense they don't really go too far. They don't service a lot of people. We have significant employers in Morgan County. We got Caperton, Ace Hardware, and all the ancillary businesses that are located there that are currently not served whatsoever with public utilities. GAT looking to essentially double up his capacity by putting in another finishing line. Without water and sewer, he manages his own package plant, and also has some customers on that package plant for the wastewater side. So I believe the last time a water and sewer project was looked at, there was some small cities block grant money that was utilized and had to stop because Shirley Farms threw out the low mod or death mod ratio. So that's where it stopped. Now, since then, as you can tell, we have Valley Health, Rodersville Cycle, Apple Valley Waste, Tractor Supply. We've had all these businesses pop up because we planted the seed, or whoever planted the seed for economic development, because infrastructure is your basic building blocks of economic development. They're the first thing site selector asks, or what are your public infrastructure? What are your water, sewer? Do you have natural gas? What's your internet look like? If you can't check all those boxes, with the exception of natural gas, it's becoming more and more a requirement, but they look at that as a luxury now for lowering their heating bills and for drying processes in the furniture industry. They don't even look at you. So I've been on this effort to expand our water and sewer infrastructure to Tabor Road. That is the end objective of this expansion. We would pick up multiple businesses. We'd be for the wastewater treatment side of things, we'd be taking an old lagoon system out of Walls Mobile Home Park and also a package treatment plant, which there's significant benefits to doing that, being part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We don't really know what the benefits look like until we can put together some sort of funding package and if there's going to be any money potentially available from the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Association. But in the big grand scheme of things, whenever this whole project started, or this effort by myself and a few other people, I sat down, I wrote letters to every single one of our elected officials saying, hey, this is what we have plans. That was before we even knew GAT was expanding, but now that we have GAT adding on 120 to 150 jobs, the retention aspect of it is almost as significant as the potential future economic development. So retaining these valuable employers that Morgan County has. So that being said, some folks have been involved in some back and forth communications between PSD, County Commission, Economic Development Authority, the Water Department on figuring out who's going to do what everybody's responsibilities are. Given there was a change in legislation, the PSD does have the authority under the PSD to run the water, but obviously they run a sewer facility, so it would be an ideal project to partner with the Water Department. So essentially why I'm here is to request that you guys put out an RFP to do at least the preliminary engineering. It's not committing you guys to anything, with the exception of the time and effort that goes into putting together a preliminary or a RFP for preliminary engineering. And as I talked about at the water committee meeting, I would encourage you in that preliminary engineering to request some potential exploration drill wells on the county 16 acres possible for locating the secondary water source. The whole thought of building a new plant, that's another beast for another day, because as everybody's aware, this plant is made to treat the spring water specifically. It can't treat well water. So, but I think it would be instrumental in at least exploring that option. Now, the county owns 16 acres right above, I guess, to the west of a property that has a very, very high producing commercial well now. So that would be my recommendation, is to, whenever we're putting out the RFP, specifically, we'll put out the RFP for the water, improved water line improvement expansion project with the caveat of doing some potential exploratory wells on the county's property. to alleviate the concerns for locating a secondary water source, which I believe, are valid. We don't know how long our springs are gonna go. And I had a conversation with Jack. I think there was a large effort to study our springs and get as much information as we can out of them. So I think that would be beneficial for the engineer to have that data of the work and effort that particular group did whenever they were studying the springs and capacity. But, and what I've envisioned as far as capacity concerns would be building another tower somewhere out there, but, that will obviously come to light in preliminary engineering. So the preliminary engineering, the PSD voted at their last meeting to do their portion of the preliminary engineering. So I'm here to request that you guys put out an RFP to do the very beginning step of the process on determining what the whole project's gonna cost, what the preliminary engineering is gonna cost, and if you've worked on some of these projects, some of the projects, depending on which engineer actually wins the bid, that engineer may build the preliminary engineering cost into the overall project cost, and you don't actually have any upfront money exchanging hands until the end until the project's done. My only ask, my commitment to the water committee was, and Chris and Ron can attest to this, and Scott, but every time I've talked about this, I understand and I've listened to your concerns. You don't want to stick your current users with a rate increase to fund expansion. And I totally get that, and I totally agree. I don't think it's fair to your current users. So my only ask is that once the preliminary engineering is done, they'll be able to tell us the potential customers, and would be whatever that number is after your staffing costs and things to treat that additional water would be use that additional money for your debt servicing. So you're not taking on new debt per se for your existing rate users. You're not asking for a rate increase. But if you pick up 70 customers and it generates $2,000 a month, amortized over 40 years, if it's a USDA loan at 2%, that might be $400,000. So there's your skin in the game. But that's not asking you guys to pick up anything because you're getting the new customers. You're rolling that income that you're collecting straight into the your infrastructure improvements. As far as where we're at in the process, right now we're highly optimistic that we might be able to secure some EDA financing, and that can be anywhere from $1 to $5 million for the project. And so a lot of what we do depends on the total amount of funding that we get. We've also requested $1 million earmarks from Senator Capito and Senator Manchin's office. We can't give both, although I wish we could. We can only give one. We've also, we've had letters of support from all the local businesses, writing that are going to be served down from there. Eddie's Tire, Bob's Tire, Caperton, Ace Hardware, all of them are in support of this project because, as you all well know, public water and sewer are extremely important and instrumental for your operating day-to-day businesses when you're not having to worry about operating the package plant at the same time as supply your needs and furniture. And I just personally think that we as elected officials owe it to these businesses that provide, viable sources of income for many families here in Morgan County to not have to struggle with figuring out how they're going to flush the toilets, or turn on a tap and water be there, or add some fire suppression for your expansion without having to add on to an existing tank. As you guys well know, if you drive past Caperton Furniture, you see a big water tank back there, and he had to put that in there because of the fire suppression. On public utilities, things might have been a little different, but that tank in particular was a large business expense. Would he have been on public utilities, he wouldn't have had to incur as a business owner. Susan, you didn't serve it on the EDA.
I lived through all of that and got called several names because we couldn't do that. We just couldn't do it because at that time, number one, we were under a moratorium.
Right.
And we were losing water, and not only could we run a line just out to Caperton, by law we have to serve every person that requests along the
Yep.
way. So that it was just undoable that we would
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
against time,
Yep.
and so he did what business people do.
Yep. Yeah. You have to
Right.
figure out a way to
He
make
went,
it
he
work.
went the way that needed to be to get his business to work.
And now that he's expanding, and adding that many more jobs, most of which are Morgan County residents. I think we owe it to these local businesses to make an attempt. I mean, right now, I hope not. Somebody might throw some of that for saying it, but I hope we don't see an economic time like this where there's so much money coming from the federal government for projects like this because of COVID. That's the reason why there's so much money flowing into the economy for infrastructure projects is the American Recovery Plan, getting everybody back to work and pumping money into the communities, pumping money into municipalities and county governments to try to ignite some more growth locally. So I don't know if we'll ever see an opportunity like this again, where we have the opportunity and the potential advantage to capture funds from the federal government and EDA grants, low interest loans, or however we have to structure it to make something like this happen. And if this project would have been up 15 years ago, it was probably half the cost is what it is if we end us doing it today. So my fear is if we don't act on the opportunity with the potential funding mechanisms that are out there to secure money, not generate a rate increase for your current users, that we won't see this again. So I think if we're going to strike while the iron's hot, although publicly I'm against pumping all this money into the economy like this, I think we can find a better use for it. But if it's going to happen, I want to make sure Morgan County gets our fair share. So
Does the request for proposal adhere us to any decision, adhere us to continuing further with the, if
No, what-
proposals come in and we don't?
So what I would say, and obviously I'm only one commissioner out of three, but if the PER comes in, or the PER comes in at $30,000 or whatever, and you guys don't want to pay for it, somebody on behalf of the town council comes and presents it to the county commission. I believe it's an eligible expense under the ARP money. That could be something that us three could look at. Obviously, I can't guarantee it because I'm only one vote, but that's what I would recommend. But without a PER, we don't have a shovel-ready project. And as soon as this money continues to get pumped into the economy, Tracy Roan from EDA in our conference call said multiple times, this money will go to shovel-ready projects. So the PER is the very first step and one of the most important steps to overcoming any obstacles in getting there. So without a PER, we can't go request funding, we can't do anything. Once we secure the PERs, we can then put an application together, partner with Region 9, Berkeley Springs Waterworks, Warm Springs PSD will be co-applicants on the application. Then some may say, Sean, isn't this a little premature? Why don't we wait? We can't go back to the EDA honey hole twice. So we can only get this money one time. So if we move forward with the PSD project and water's not quite ready, we can't go back to EDA again later and say, hey, they look at it as one project, although it's two separate projects, two separate holes, two separate lines.
Right.
It's one project in their eyes. So we can't go back. So I don't want to risk the opportunity of getting $1 million now when we could get $3.5 million now for the project if we did both of them together. So I know there's, on the water department side of things, you have some additional worries, and Susan mentioned one, if the line goes past your house, you don't have to take it. But talking to many of the residents down there, their water's not the best. They would probably jump on board, but we don't know that yet. Right. PSD, if they're running by, you have to hook up. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's obviously the one unknown. So, but a lot of that information will be determined once we get a preliminary engineering report done. We can look at ratios and different funding mechanisms and say, okay, if there's 80 customers and 60% hookup, is it going to be worth it? Does it make financial sense to do it? So, but in order to get there,
we don't know until.
Yep.
So.
We think another aspect of this that gives us some pause, and I'm not saying we're not going to do it, is that within our area right now, I mean, we go to Valley Health or actually Ridersville Cycle. We go over to my property at Montevita. We go, we have a wide area right after U.S. Silica. So also, a thought that we have is look at all the development within our current system that could do it. Sure. And so there's, so that's why I think, that including a second source in this proposal is a have to for Morgan County.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think locating with the concerns of our spring and how treasured our spring is, I think it's absolutely a valid concern, a very valid point to make that we would, part of the wishes would be to see if we can locate a secondary water source, which obviously means building a new plant and all this other stuff, but that's, we can look at different funding mechanisms for, building a plant, my goodness, you're probably $7-10 million in building a new plant. So that's a much bigger beast to tackle, but it is something that is doable within the next 10 years to look at the potential of exploring different funding mechanisms right in the governor's office, exploring different avenues for that.
Right.
As
Bond
long-
sales, whatever.
Yeah, okay, if Berkeley Springs Water Works says we don't want to be involved, so that decision is made. And if it's going forward with the Warm Springs Public Service District, which it can, and they come to the end of our line at Riders Hill Cycle, and they wanna buy bulk water, my understanding is we keep the cubes.
That's correct.
The water's going anyway.
Yeah.
And we don't, that's why I'm here.
Right.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want that to happen. Again, I used the example earlier. The PSD is in the food business, you guys are in the water business. I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Keep them separate. You guys, I'd rather have Ron managing the plant and all that good stuff. That's perfectly fine by me. But
Although
like
they
you said,
can,
the
although they are eligible.
yeah, they
water
do
too.
have the authority under the Public Service Commission to hook up a master meter and run that line anyway.
Right.
That is an alternative approach, sure, but I don't think it's the most politically correct approach to do. I'd rather have you guys as partners in this endeavor. I think it's mutually beneficial for the community, the residents we serve, for the employers that are already here, and then also planting the seeds for future economic development. There's a lot of flat ground that's open for economic development right on 523,
Right.
which is where everybody's looking for.
Let me ask you a question, and you're probably gonna beat me and
That's fine.
everything else, but, we've been talking annexation. We'd like to try to grow our town limits, to bring more people in, number one, to produce better services and all that kind of stuff. If we signed on to this program, will the county help us maybe work on annexation?
Is that bartering?
No, I'm just,
I would say, yeah.
I'm just saying, you're coming to us and asking us to do maybe a $3 million project, which we possibly can work on a secondary water source. But the thing about it is, I like in the state of Maryland, anywhere that a water line runs is automatically annexed into the town properties. That's right, Mr. Mayor from Hancock, right? That's the way you all operate in Maryland. So
In West Virginia, though,
it's different.
it's different. I
And
mean,
I
you go look at
understand that.
Hampshire County, Grant County, you have water and sewer lines 10 miles out of their community,
Right.
in the middle of nowhere, which again still blows my mind whenever we, now that my oldest daughter, Scotland, is old enough to play sports in middle school, and we get to travel to all these different places for her away games, I see these fire hydrants 10 miles out of the community. I'm like, how in the world is that even feasible? How did they, one, find the money? How do they have the capacity? Now that I know a little bit more about what all goes into those efforts, but there's a big push for providing utilities in rural areas such as West Virginia that can potentially spur economic development. But again, to me, this project is also about the retention aspect of it. If you go out and talk to Gat now, had he not already been established there, he wouldn't have done that plant extension there because he doesn't have utility. It doesn't make financial sense when Maryland would just give him money to locate his business there. Provide 300 jobs in a community with an average starting wage of $15 an hour, whatever. I mean, he could probably go to Maryland and work tax free, but we just don't have that capability here, capacity in the state of West Virginia.
Absolutely.
So we did have a big victory though. The county, we got the first, I'm gonna say it wrong. It's through the DOH and it's partnered with the State Development Authority to get a grant up to $400,000 to help Gat with his turning lane out there because of the increased traffic on Internet 522. So that's $400,000 that Gat was going to have to write out a check for or borrow money for that now he can invest back into his staff, into better equipment, technology. That's the first one to my knowledge that's ever been had here in Morgan County. So that's a big victory, and it hasn't got a lot of press yet, but I believe it will once that grant is actually, the county actually has to manage the project, which we're going to do. But so the check's actually written from the state. I don't want to count my checks before they hatch, but we believe we're gonna get that grant. It's already been awarded to us. We just need to make sure we get it from here to the finish line. And that's part of the planning commission process that they're going through.
Well, let me confer with the water committee. I know you presented this to the water committee, and I know Ron's here, and how do you all feel in this situation? Should we go out and do this study and see what we can capture or bring in as far as whatever, and go along hopefully and be able to do this with the county and with the PSD and extend our water lines out that way? How does the committee feel about it?
Ron, Ron is our expert. So I would defer to Ron in terms of having an opportunity to talk and express where his position is about the plant and where we need
Right.
to go. But Ron, you stayed for us this evening. So where do you stand on this in terms of any concerns, or think it's the right time, or any issues you see with it?
Some 4 years ago, when I took this job, one of the things that got on my radar immediately was the secondary water source. We have a tremendous water source. We have pristine, beautiful spring water there at North Fairfax. The probability of that drying up is probably minuscule, but it's not zero. And it could happen months, years, who knows? It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
You just don't know. It's just one of those things. Susan was alluding to our service area, and she didn't go east out by Fairfax Street. There are two developments out there on the right-hand side of Route 9 that we do not supply water to. And I would like for us to be able to do that, because I get calls. I've gotten several calls from homeowners in these areas that are wondering, why we don't have water for them. And currently we do not. I agree with Sean 100%. With the infrastructure money that's available now, we're not going to see this again. I just can't ever foresee that happening. So as far as timing is concerned, if we're going to do it, this would be the time to do it. Talking to Scott, yeah, they can take the water project, and we can put a meter out there and hook onto our water line. He doesn't want to do that.
Right.
He doesn't want to do that. He wants water and sewer to run together. And I certainly understand why.
Yeah.
Because it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons.
Right.
They have to follow with PSC,
Yeah.
and the rates. I mean, it's a lot. You have to do a rate case. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. As far as our plant now is concerned, we've got a million gallon a day plant that we can treat, and we're treating about 350,000. So as far as that's concerned, that's not an issue. The distribution side of that, we're going to have to look at a little bit. Our availability to pump water further than we are pumping it in. That will definitely have to be looked at.
And that would be part of this proposal.
That's correct.
Council.
That would be part of that's correct.
They look at containing the current water pressure that we currently have for our customers as opposed to the water pressure dwindling down as we try to take.
They'd be looking at pressure, they'd be looking at flow, they'd be looking at a lot of different things. Okay, which is necessary, and I understand that. There's probably gonna have to be another tank there, and maybe a booster station, probably a booster station, at this point. But however, that's not all bad either. If we have to, we have to put another plant out there, we can operate that plant with what we have now, not with what we have now. Of course, a lot of this is up to the Public Service Commission, what they'll allow us to do. So, again, I say the money availability is here. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. And in probably, Sean, 5-6 years, how far they're running this out.
We have to. If we qualified and we're awarded the EDA grant, the money would have to be expended by 2027.
Okay.
I believe it's September of 2027.
Yeah,
So the
5
project
years.
pipe would have to be in the ground by then.
5 years.
So you're looking 5 or 6 years
Right.
down the road. And at that point, when that time limit runs out, I'll be shocked. you know, to see this availability, this kind of money that's available.
So you're in favor of request for?
I am. Yeah, I'm in favor of that. As long as it does not affect our current customer base as far as, raising rates. We
Yeah.
definitely do not want to. The mayor's made that very clear.
I've made that very
He
clear.
doesn't
We will
want to
not
do that.
raise
And I
rates.
understand that.
Yeah.
And I understand that. We don't want to do that.
We're not gonna raise rates to push water out 522. If it comes to that point, then this project will be shut down, because I will not, on the backs of the people that already have water, and will I have them pay for a project to go out 522 or Route 9?
But what will we know then? I mean, after the engineering, the
Well, so
review
the
is done.
process, in my understanding, would be preliminary engineering first. Work on an application, second, co-applicant with the PSD, put together the total project costs, present it to EDA, figure out how much money we can secure from the federal government. Currently, there's one unknown that we still don't know, and it's called they call it the NOFA, Notice of Funding, from the federal government. Traditionally, you can't match federal money, such as money from the Federal Economic Development Authority, with federal money. So the ARP money is federal money. So typically, in years past, you've never been able to do that. But there's also never been a pandemic where we flooded the economy with this much money, with the emphasis on the infrastructure improvements. So there is a chance that we might be able to use some of the ARP money that the county got to fund a portion of this project, but that we don't know yet. There's also the chance that we would earmark. So it's going to come down to, once we get the PER done, get the application together, present it to the Federal Economic Development Authority, present it to USDA, present it to all the different various funding mechanisms, and figure out how much money we can get. I mean, that's what it's going to boil down to. Is that will determine. Now, again, I'm asking the same thing of you that I'm doing the PSD. If you guys net $3,000 in revenue a month, if that money, except for your ordinary operating costs, be earmarked for debt servicing. I mean, we're nonprofits, we're government organizations, we're not made to make money. So if we can keep our operating costs at a certain level, and the PER will bring all that stuff to light, and then that money can be earmarked to be utilized through a low interest 1% or 2% 40-year loan through USDA, and you'd be surprised how much $3,000, $4,000 a month stretches out over 30 or 40 years. So that's my only request, but that's not enacting you to or making you present a rate case. It's not making you raise your rates on your current users. It's just asking you to utilize the money the revenue that you get. But there's also the opportunity that we may not have to do that at all, depending on how much money we can get from EDA, earmark funding, etc. So we might be able to be net positive at the end of this, as far as revenue goes.
Anything else, Ron?
I don't know that we've ever been closer to a secondary water source than we possibly are now. And I've been asked the question before, what about the Tennessee Grove? Well, as long as I'm the manager of this water department, I'll fight that tooth and nail.
Yeah.
I just don't.
It's not an option.
I don't want that to be the secondary water.
Yeah, that's not an option.
But this is about as close as we've ever been to making this happen. I mean, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, I'll probably be out of the picture. But it'd be nice to be a part of. If we're going to go with this, setting this thing up. I think it's time to move. That's what we decided.
My
Well,
whole
you
intention would be
actually
to have the project out to bid and construction started by 2025, 2024. That's my objective. I mean, as you guys know, working with this, many of you have worked on way more projects than I have, and it's been a steep learning curve. One of the most frustrating things with governments is your inability to get stuff done in the time frame you want to. So this project, although we're talking about it now, it may be 3 or 4 years down the road before there are actually construction crews showing up.
Absolutely.
And one thing I definitely like to do, or want to do, our current water project that we haven't started, which COVID has practically just dismantled. We're now at the stages where we're about ready to get bid. So I would like to get that completed, and probably the fall next year, that probably will be.
Probably will be the future.
But oh yeah.
Definitely a video.
My thing, if in the end of all this, we would have to give them water anyway, worst case
Yeah, we're
scenario,
still-
we don't wanna do it, and we have to give them water anyway.
We're locked into it anyway,
It
we
would
might as
be
well.
better to go along with it and be on the learning curve of it with you and be recipients of information and any growth
Absolutely.
to the company that may be possible.
I think going with Ron's recommendation, I think it's pretty astounding that Ron is definitely in favor. I'm definitely in favor of, number one, looking at the project, but number two, secondary water source. That's been on my mind, and ever since I came on board as a council member, right up to now. I mean, if we lose those springs, we lose everything we got right now. So we really need to be pressing that issue, secondary water source. And I'm going to confer with Ron. We've never been closer to possibly being able to make that maybe start happening somewhere along the line. We can get that. So
And there's been, and we're not starting from scratch. There's been so much legwork that's already been
Yeah.
invested into trying to get it to this point. I did it the complete opposite way as usual. I wanted to make sure I could try to find the money before I came and asked you guys, because I knew the centuries old argument. I don't want to raise rates, so that I tried to avoid that obstacle from the beginning by trying to find the money and explain the project with, I can't tell you how many different organizations. So
Beth had a question.
Who would write that application?
Probably Region 9.
Region 9.
Yeah.
I've already spoke to Region 9 and, should you guys be willing to move forward, they'd be coordinating with Region 9 and, they would assist in writing the RFP and,
that's
so-
basically what they did with our
That's not-
last water line
But
project.
that's not free.
No, it's not free.
That's
Yeah,
not
they
free.
typically charge based on whatever the end job is. I forget what the-
But we're not going to know unless we have that study whether or not it's even feasible. So we might as well go ahead and go in and at least get the study done. And then if it's not feasible for us, then we know it's not feasible. But I mean, I'm all about secondary water source. And I mean, this is really starting to sound a lot better to me in that secondary water source, even though we may have to up the ante sometime along the line and build it. We'll definitely have to build another plant. But, at least we have something on the radar that we can start working forward to. And
Jack, you had come to the water committee at one point as planning. You've been, I know, very involved with the planning commission for years with Morgan County and involved and talked to us about some of these issues. Do you have anything you would like to add about what's being proposed or any concerns that you have?
Well, thank you, Chris. And yes, there has been, as Sean says, a bunch of work done already. The participants in the water committee, for instance, Jim Michael and several others, Susan was on there for a while, very active. And there was good cooperation between the county and the town in trying to advance the concept of supplying water along the 522 corridor, because there has been an interest in doing that for a number of years. That's to think that there will be the next step undertaken is very heartening to me personally, and I'm sure would be to those who were working on the water committee for years. The committee was a county commission appointed group who received a rather sizable grant through the conservation agency, and they supervised and provided a lot of resources for that work. The result was a compilation of data about the possible sources throughout the county based on a coordinated effort with USGS, Geologic Survey. We got resources and help from the from West Virginia universities, some very well qualified hydrologists participated in that and provided information. The part of this was a preliminary engineered drawing, not shovel ready, but an engineered drawing of how water lines might be provided along 522 and the potential plant features, quantity, capacity and that kind of thing. Again, not far enough along to do what Sean is now talking about. But there's a lot of information in there that I think might be a help to this next step. And again, the idea of having 522, the 522 corridor fully provided with water and sewer, as well as some of the other infrastructure items and features, is very exciting. So, yes, I would think that getting providing the results of a current study, because what the water committee was involved in, I'm sure, is now at least somewhat out of date. Certainly, the regulatory environment has changed, and it sounds like, although I don't know, but it sounds like the relationship between the town and the state in terms of our springs has changed. So that all sounds promising.
Thank you. I appreciate your input.
Mhm.
To hear your views on it.
Yeah, sure.
Now with that, I'd like to make a motion that the council approve the water department going forward with an RFP for preliminary engineering for a water line extension south along 522 to what is it, John?
Tabor Road.
Tabor Road.
That's where gravity stops for us.
Yes.
And more pump stations.
The old Drury bookstore.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say.
We all knew where
Tabor Road was.
Yes, we remember.
And a church now.
Yes, there's a church
Soon
out
to
there
be.
that, yeah.
It's soon to be church. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah, right next
okay.
to it.
I have a motion. Do I have a second on the floor?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second on the floor to explore an RFP for the water department to explore with this RFP to bring that forward. Any discussion? All right. Well, I'll call the question in. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
You're
And if
all
you, Ron, if you or the water committee, if you guys need any assistance with coordinating with Region 9, I know a guy that used to run Region 9. So
Yeah.
Bill will also be instrumental in helping facilitate that process moving forward. So,
Yeah, we'll just get a hold of Bill and ask him to hold her hand.
all right. Well, hey, thank you all for your time. I
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
Thanks
Back
for
to
presenting that to
South
us.
Florida Fire.
So anyway,
Thank
thanks,
you, Ron.
Ron. Appreciate it. See you all later. Okay, moving along. It's not really on the agenda, but I'm just going to ask council to go ahead and authorize this. They're going to do a remembrance for Jeannie Mosier at the Ice House on the 28th of next month, August 28th. And they're asking that we kind of block off it looks like 4 meters on Independence Street. There are those 4 meters. And then along Mercer Street, we don't have any meters there, but there's a lot of parking over there from other places that they could have, like handicap spaces and stuff like that for that day, so people could get into the Ice House for the memorial. I'm kind of just asking the council to please authorize that. It's only going to be for that one day. It'll be 4 unmetered spaces on the west side of Mercer and 4 metered spaces. I'm kind of just asking council if they would go ahead and authorize that so that we could send out and post that down there for the next couple of weeks that, there will be no parking other than, parking for that event on that particular day.
I haven't seen it in person.
No. No, and I think, common consent, if everybody's okay with that, so, Danielle, can you take care of this for me? Okay, so you're gonna make sure, so we get all those spaces on Mercer Street cleared? Good enough, that's all I needed to know. Yeah, that's the 28th of next month, so let's put that on our calendars if you're around or whatever. We'll go from there. All right, let's move forward. Communications from there, because I don't see Chuck Amp here, so.
Go with the state park guys.
Okay, we can do that. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. 'Cause I was sitting here, I haven't seen this man for months, so I was just
I looked
thinking.
for you at Roy's, my goodness.
Yeah, but anyway, let's bring you forward and you can go ahead and, talk to council about what you have to, and then we can get you out of here.
Get me out of here.
Yeah, well,
If you don't wanna go.
if you don't want to go, you can sit here and just have fun with
I
us.
find this fascinating.
Well, yeah.
Move to town,
It
please.
was a long time ago. It was 2016 when I first came to you and asked asked the town if the town would sponsor the project of Berkeley Springs State Park. Oh, I'm Pete Gordon. I'm with Berkeley Springs State Park Historical Foundation. I've either had you in school or your children or a colleague of yours. I don't know, but anyway. My wife Margaret and I'm going to make this brief, an overview, because I know you know something about it. I just want to make sure everyone's on board. Margaret and I were invited by Mary Lou Trump to join Berkeley Springs State Park Foundation, Historical Foundation. And we, for sure, I didn't know who was on it. And I didn't know what it was all about. I asked Chris Hansroth, who was the superintendent of the park at that point, what does the park need? He said there are three things that were desperately needed. You need to repair the walls in the run before they collapse. It could undermine the banks of the park, cost millions if that happens. So that's number one. Repairing the walls, repointing the walls in the run. He said these two pedestrian bridges, we've got to do something about them. They've got to come up because we're not going to stop the flooding events. When the flooding events occur, they maximize the flooding in the park. So raise the bridges somehow to minimize the flooding and fix these sidewalks. He said there's sidewalks, old concrete and asphalt sidewalks with roots growing up. We need to do those three things. He said, all right, we roll up our sleeves and got a good grant. We got a couple. I'm not going to go into the grants. I'll be glad to tell you more about that if you want. But it required us to find a government entity as a sponsor, and you, the town, at that point graciously agreed to be the sponsor. And when I first spoke to you about this, I said, there's not a dime that's going to come out of your pockets and a minimum amount of responsibility. And there's going to be some responsibility because the money will flow through here. But that part about, not a dime from you guys, that's my promise, and I stick with that. But I'm here this evening to sign an agreement with the town that says, essentially, that you're not going to have to pay any money out of pocket for this. We have an agreement, a draft agreement that I think we're ready to sign. There are no financial figures in there because we have a lot to iron out with the Department of Highways and with Thrasher Engineering. And we're in the process of doing that. And I think Sean spoke about how things take the time they take and longer. Well, when I came to you, we were hoping that this project of ours would be finished in 2018, 2019 at the latest. We're looking at, we're gonna stay on this. Things are finally bubbling. Very encouraged about that. Pete Brown has been a huge help to us in understanding the hoops and hurdles, particularly DOH. But if we stay on this, it looks as though we can begin this project next spring, have it completed before apple butter.
any other details, I'll let you know. The reason I'm here this evening is to, number one, see you all again. Number two, sign an agreement that basically says just what I said. And if you have any questions,
You have that agreement?
Do we have that
Is it
officially typed
somewhere
up?
in this?
Not official to sign, but what Peter presented to
Right.
you this morning,
Yeah.
you would, I could,
Yeah.
plus he emailed it to us.
Draft.
I would like to show you one thing. We've had a back and forth about the bridges, and currently, the pedestrian bridge down by Fairfax Street is going to be removed. Streetscapes allows access to that water.
Right.
The bridge behind the gazebo. The original idea was to have a nice arched bridge, which would really, we thought, be attractive and be consistent with the ambiance of our park. And we went back and forth, and Thrasher Engineering suggested we take the old bridge, take it and renovate it. Now, you know what it looks like now. It's concrete and pipe. Raise it up, make it look a whole lot better. Raise it up with concrete platforms. And then we had planned to go to local metalsmiths for railings. Margaret and I it was in March, took a trip to Point of Rocks State Park, came across this bridge. And currently, we brought this on the 19th of July. I have two of these, so let me show you this. We came across this. I contacted Frederick County Parks and Rec, which takes care of Point of Rocks State Park. Not only did they tell me who provided the bridge, they sent me all the drawings, and everything. I called these guys. Now, whether, if we go through with this, it's going to be a bid process because it's federal money and
Right.
state money. I would love for this group to do this. The cost of this bridge is less than the latest cost estimate from Thrasher for a prefabricated bridge.
Mhm.
The original idea was out. We didn't want a prefab bridge. We looked it up on the internet. There were these just ugly things slapped to death. This is a prefab bridge done to your specifications. And it comes, the railing is on it. It's not iron railing.
Right.
It's one piece. Yeah. And we really like the railing. The railing alone, I would guess one of our local metalsmiths would be 20 or 30 grand just for the railing. And until that was finished, they would raise the bridge, keep the old railing on there and put some kind of mesh, which I just think would be very unattractive. So anyway, that's just FYI. You can hang on to these. If you want more copies, I can get them.
I think that looks really good. I think that would be awesome.
The
So,
foundation thought unanimously.
Yeah.
We let go of this.
I think
So
that would be
This
awesome.
agreement is really standard for anybody doing any kind of project within, you have to have an agreement with the political subdivision in which the project is being done.
mhm.
So this is, I believe, very standard
So we can get
procedure,
that.
I think.
I-
Really, all you gotta do is take off the draft.
Yeah, take the
You
draft
can
off.
sign
of
it,
it.
that red sheet, and fix it.
I mean, we
Right
can sign it and take the draft off. of
Do we
it.
need to do a
Page
resolution? There was a resolution.
Get one of them too.
There's a
Yeah.
resolution.
You can sign that.
You got all that?
There's
Yep.
a resolution below that.
So let's do this. Since he's here, let's move on and look at this resolution. We also have a resolution, and it's Town of Bath Resolution 2021 dot whatever we put in there. I think it was whatever. I can't remember what our last one was last month.
Well, it'll be one because we
Right.
go per month. This is the first one this month.
So it'd be a one.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if the council has looked at this, but it's just basically a resolution to authorize the signing of a sponsorship agreement between the town of Bath and the Berkeley Springs Park Historical Foundation. The town of Bath is acting as the governmental sponsor of two transportation grants that are being used to fund the construction of improvements in Berkeley Springs State Park. The Berkeley Springs State Park Historical Foundation is the source of the 20% matching funds required by the TA grants. The sponsorship agreement identifies the responsibilities of the foundation and the town regarding the moment of matching funds from the foundation to the town and subsequently to the West Virginia DOH to support the solicitation and award of construction contract.
Our participation in this is administrative.
Right, we're of administrative and that's it, and that's basically where this goes back to. So, I'm not gonna read the rest of it, that's basically the gist of the whole thing. So, like I said, I would, entertain a motion if somebody so moved to do. Okay. All right, I have a motion, a second, for the Town of Bath Resolution 2021, whatever those, we'll get that. Okay, do we have any discussion? Anybody? Okay, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, resolution passes. So which means that we can go ahead and sign the agreement. Let's get it all typed up and then we'll get together one day or I'll bring it to where you are or we'll figure out how to. and
Sharon, if you get hold of me, just let me know and.
That sounds good and then we'll meet in here and sign it all and take care of it.
Perfect.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, man. That takes a lot off of our plate and your plate too. So now we've got that agreement. So.
Well, we appreciate you being a part, a huge part of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Go for that bridge.
Oh, I,
Did you send him the 7-13U agreement that we just
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, we
I-
can
You
send
I
it.
have a part of that?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
thought you
I
did.
grabbed his card.
Yeah, because that maybe,
Well, they can maybe work together.
right,
So,
with flood control.
so that would be great.
But as he said, he said it takes forever. It sounds like you're in the street right there.
Well, never know what can come. You never know what can happen. So,
Worth asking.
Let me just say one more thing, which is that if you'd ever like me to come, if there are any questions you have or comments, I won't make another 5 years.
thank you.
So
Thank
keep
you.
it-
I'd like
Thank you.
to publicly thank you
Okay.
for helping them out.
All right. Next thing on my thing was the committee assignments that we went over yesterday. I just want to go over the committee assignments real quick and make sure that everything is clear. What we worked out yesterday for Public Works is Rick Weber is the chairman, Greg Forney, and myself are on that committee. The ordinance committee is going to be
See? Okay, public works and I'm not, and you're on.
yeah. We moved
Is this a newly
This
typed
is the
up?
new one here.
New, okay.
This is the new one. It's in your packet. It should be in your packet.
I just want to.
It should be in your packet.
All right.
You got
I just want to make
Okay.
sure for my minutes and
All
all
right.
that I have it.
Yep, you got it. All right, ordinance is gonna be myself, Rick Weber, Rose Jackson. Grant is gonna be, Greg Forney is the chairman, Susan Webster, and Elizabeth Skinner. Is that what you got? Great,
Yeah,
okay.
all right,
All right, you good?
all right.
Cemetery is gonna be Elizabeth Skinner as the chair, Scott Murphy and Chris Chapman, on the committee. Public Safety is gonna be Rose Jackson, Chris Chapman, Rick Weber. Finance is gonna be Susan Webster, Elizabeth Skinner, and Greg Forney. Water is gonna be Chris Chapman as the chair, Rose Jackson, and Scott Murphy. And then we have appointed representatives to Travel Berkeley Springs, the Landmark, Chamber of Commerce, the BDA. Of course, we moved John Boer over to that because he was our council member last time. So these committees need some volunteers to help out. I know Rose said I think she would do Travel Berkeley Springs and the Chamber of Commerce. So we can put her in there if that's okay with everybody.
I'd like to volunteer for the tree board because so much of the work that they do relates to one or the other of the cemetery.
That would be
It might-
wonderful.
It
That
would be a good,
Okay. Does anybody have any problem with putting Rose on travel Berkeley Springs and Chamber of Commerce since she goes to them?
No, I don't know
Okay.
if that was fine.
Okay, and then, Beth, okay. We'll put Beth on the tree board as our representative. I thank you, Beth, for that. Anybody wanna, we don't really have landmarks right now, but, you know, I wanna get it cranking back up once all the settlement settles, and we have BDA. So right now, BDA, we need a representative. I can't remember who we had on there. Were you the BDA representative?
Well, Beth and I were,
Okay.
so, I don't know,
Does anybody else want to take some stuff off your all's plate? I don't have a problem with, you know, if you don't have a problem, unless you want to be on it, it don't matter. You can pick. You pick.
well, I mean, I'll certainly stay.
Okay.
Chris doesn't want it.
I've been trying to attend meetings or to
You-
at least
you
zoom into
have.
meetings.
Well,
So,
let's
so
put,
I probably would do the same thing, but I really want,
focus on
as
that.
you and Chris know, I got a lot on my plate.
With the
cemetery. I
cemetery,
really want to
yeah.
move that stuff forward this year.
Okay.
For Chris,
so yeah, I'm-
Okay, we'll schedule Chris in there. And then we'll work on, somebody to go with the streetscapes. Basically, we've, in past history, it's been Susan or myself with the streetscapes, but, you know,
we're pretty independent.
right,
all
they've
three
got,
of the other
you know,
ones are-
Pete here is the ace at the streetscapes, so, you know, and then we got the rails to trails and the train depot. We have those last two committees, basically, you know,
The rails to trails is a county. you
right,
know, and
right.
So really, at this point, I'm not sure.
Not
I mean, we're definitely involved.
right. I mean, you know, we could put a representative, or we could just, you know, attend
but you wanna
meetings.
do any of these, Grenade?
Well, that's why I'm trying to, I don't know what days they meet. My biggest thing is looking at the schedule with, you know, the days thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you look at your schedule and get with Sharon and find out if there's anything in the next meeting. We don't have to make a decision
It's not
tonight.
an emergency.
Yeah, I'd just like to have a representative to be able to come back to council and report, you know, we have Pete here every time the streetscape, so, and also with the rails and trails, so most of the time we get the reporting, you know, so it would be the train depot or whatever, and so anyway, that housekeeping chore, should be complete, that should be etched
We
in
did
stone.
approve the committee's on by common consent
Right.
last evening. so
Right, we
don't
did
need
that
to-
in the meeting last night, so.
that's such a
Okay.
mess.
Also, we got some money appropriated to us from the American Rescue Plan funds. I would like to have an ad hoc committee of somebody to sit down and take this off Sharon's plate to figure out where this money can be spent. There's several agencies that are already looking at it. I had, talked to Chris, hadn't had a chance to really peruse anybody else, but Chris and I talked back and forth. I didn't know if Chris would still be willing to serve on that, to look at that, and then anybody else that would want to look at, trying to take some stuff off Sharon's plate. She's got like 5, 6, 7 grants that she's administering right now. And this is just something else that we need to sit down and we need to look at and see where we need to spend for the best bang for our money and who qualifies for it. Because we don't want to do anything out of the realm of this money coming to us, because they'll come back and say, okay, you didn't spend it the proper way, so they're going to come back and take it from us. So,
And certainly, you have a grant committee
Right.
now too, Chris, so, I mean,
right.
Well,
So-
that's what I was gonna say, is I can even get some information from you and take a look at it with that.
I mean, if you want.
I mean, it's
It
very-
says 250,000, we've only got 130.
We got 152 right now, we'll get the remainder of 118 summer of 2022.
But I'd like a committee kind of separate from our regular committees, just to sit down and look at that and kind of determine who is eligible. And come back to the council and give us feedback on who they think is eligible.
Are you looking at our hotel motel recipients or
No.
any organization?
No,
we think would be
basically,
eligible?
right now, they have to meet the criteria.
Because no, you
There
know I
is
answer
interim
that
rules
Right,
that they have to
right.
follow.
And I would say, I've asked Ron Panini for a list of things he would like to see if we can do from water. I think, the public safety has provided a list of things. If Public Works wants to think about it, and provide a list of things. And this was all before I mean, I knew this money was here and water was involved, so that's why I was looking at it. But, I know public safety is, gave me a list, through that committee, we came up with a list of things. And so there's cemetery, there's streetscapes, I mean, there are various places that have indicated an interest, so.
I think you probably need to kind of schedule up around what.
Yeah,
I think that would be ideal.
I think that would be, I mean, you know,
As you know, people are always looking.
I would also like to look at if there's anywhere or any way that we can do a little bit more paving of some streets, if any way this can fit into that category.
I'll speak on behalf of Public Works.
You know,
Definitely.
So that's kind of been on my mind, maybe we can work on another street, because we've been doing 2 streets a year, trying to get our streets back up to.
I think stormwater infrastructure
Right.
around that would be the case to make.
Right.
But it's on, if you can make that case, I think you can.
So, like I
And
said,
also, Rose isn't here today, but I do know that they were looking to have a representative from the police department, so Tony or someone, because of the first responders. There's a lot of areas in there that they
so
qualify.
I mean, we could do Tony, and if Chris, if you're willing, will you be willing to look into that?
Sure.
And Greg, would you be willing to do that?
Hey, this is an ad hoc.
Yeah, to look into the American
32,000
Rescue Plan.
now and another 118 next summer.
So,
I'd like the suggestion that perhaps Chris, since it's in the grant committee, that maybe the grant committee also look and perhaps make some recommendations. to that.
Absolutely.
I really do.
absolutely,
As
absolutely,
many eyes as we have that can look at it. the better.
absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I'd like 3 people just to be able to get all this information, compile it, take it off of her plate, so that we can compile it and we can make the best decision with the money we have to spread it out where it needs to go. I mean, we've been given this money, we need to make the best we can of the money that we've been given. And hopefully, if we do that, then we'll get the other money and we can even go forward with that. So thank you all for,
Public Works definitely, paving.
like I said, you need to talk to
130,000
committee.
is not a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's gonna
But Rick,
go.
what would be helpful is just a list of some type of few priorities, or some of your top priorities, and how much you
Yeah.
get. If you can give us an estimate
You
of
can
cost,
give us a ballpark.
yeah. that would help.
And the ones that flood the most, gotta be top priority.
And the same
Well,
thing
look
for
at
the
Mercer.
cemetery.
Mercer.
Well,
Yeah.
I said I would
Yes.
do that, but
Same
what
thing
you
with
want,
cemetery.
but
That's
you
what
have
I tell.
top things, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we can both do it.
so I'll leave that in your all's. You can bring that information in, get the information from her. I know you've already been studying. Look at it. You guys get your heads together and come back with a recommendation to council when you can. And this is something that we're gonna have to work on fairly quickly. What October is our cutoff period?
It's first report. due
Yeah, that's the
October.
first report. So October we have first reporting, so we need to go ahead and make progress.
October what?
No, it's
Beginning.
due the end of September, but I think we have until October to file.
Okay,
So,
less time than we're thinking.
right. Okay, so we took care of that. Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, well, thanks for taking that. I really appreciate that. All right, Bath Development, looks like meeting, August 4th, 4:30. They're gonna do Zoom or in person. Is she doing it here now, or is she doing
No,
it?
I would say,
It comes later.
yeah, they do it at the Pines, I believe, but the
Okay.
thing with that is if you look at their website or their Facebook page, because they are moving on some ideas, I know that she was doing a the Jeeps or
Yeah,
something.
Jeep.
Yeah, something to do with the
Parade or
Jeeps to try and
something,
raise
kind
some
of an
funds
event.
and
Yeah, that's
awareness.
kind of in
So that's kind of some of the things that they're doing. So look at their Facebook page out. If you follow it, you'll see that they do have some activities on board.
All right, moving on to Parks and Recs. Their next meeting is August 18th at 7 p.m. at the Courthouse Commissioners room And also, they do have a community back to school bash, August 13th, 5 to 7. I believe this is going to be in the park. Yeah.
No,
So-
intermediate
No, so
school.
the school.
Oh, it's
yeah,
intermediate
Memorial
school, yes.
yeah.
Intermediate school. So get the word out to families and everything that may need help with some of these materials for school. I know that they really she goes all out. She shops all year long trying to get stuff for the kids. They're doing haircuts. They're going to have it looks like a free pop-up farmer's market. So like I said, she goes all out. She's got listed here kindergarten, second grade, stuff that's going to be given out, third grade, sixth grade through 12th. It's really beneficial to some of our families that don't have a lot, and these things are needed in school, and they have to provide this stuff, and it's really tough sometimes. So can we hang a list of this up in the hallways?
We have it in the hallway.
Okay.
There's also, if you go to their Facebook or the
Right.
webpage, it's out there also.
Have we been approached about a donation? in the
We
last
already
few years?
donated,
Yeah.
we budgeted
Okay.
for it last
And then
year,
it's
and
on
we
now?
already paid it
Yeah.
into Dawn, she's already received it.
So, okay. Planning commission, we really don't have a planning commission, so we're gonna work on that this next term here and see what we can come up with. You can sit down with Rebecca. So, all right, let's go to Pete, Trails, buddy.
Yeah, normally they're gonna be a meeting tomorrow, haven't found any interest in having one with the county commissioners, so unless I hear anything else, it's not gonna be a meeting. In terms of actual progress, you do, remember, every couple of weeks before your meetings, you're gonna get a status report on everything. The main thing that the town has to do is get the deed restriction removed. CSX has drafted it. Lydia, the LRS, was on vacation. She came back. The idea is to get that back in town and get that signed. And that's it. That's the last thing we have to do on part of it.
Wow.
And the grant does run out the end of September, but Rebecca's got it fixed. So the remediation of erosion is going to happen if there's anything. And then a dedication, which will probably happen in September.
Right.
And we're gonna get Gianna from the EPA in town for that. We'll spend money into putting up the rest of it. I think we did everything she asked for. So unless it's the rail trail meeting's like the fourth Wednesday, the idea is if there's nothing really happening,
Right.
the status out to the
No
players
reason to have
is
it.
just as good.
Yep, no reason to have it.
The streetscape, we will hold a meeting next month. That's August 18th to 19th. Big thing now is to get the drawing started for phase 4.
Okay.
And to, I don't know what else we could do. We win the grant for phase 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's really all I have to do. Okay. Any questions?
And the plantings for the boxes on North
Planning for
Washington
the-
Street
Yeah,
are
the plans
planned
are supposed to be done this Friday.
this
They
Friday.
should. They have to weed the
Really
boxes.
growing
I know.
quite a crop.
Rebecca and I went through it.
Yeah,
She-
really.
And she could name everything in the
I
box.
know.
But it wasn't
They're
like she
useless.
wanted them there. I know we can grow some. No,
Okay.
that's still, I checked her today, and it's just what's happening.
Okay. Okay.
You sat here all that time to say that.
You said 90% of this morning. Well, yeah, but that was not the official meeting.
We love you. We love
I
you,
think,
Pete.
I think getting Pete there.
Yeah.
I
All
know,
right.
yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard me, but I really do want to thank you, Council, that's the phase 3 work you've done with them, because so you
Absolutely.
helped them out a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm gonna stick with it. 'cause It's, once you've learned the drill with DOH,
Oh, yeah.
you need.
You got it down pat
you need
down.
to
That-
share it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to share it.
Yep.
And you're not allowed to antagonize anybody.
That's
No,
it.
it's
That's
so
the
sad.
trick.
That's it.
Okay.
Pete, thank you,
Thank
buddy.
you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Train Depot, we haven't heard anything other. Do you have something?
Well, what I got is the letter that Charles Trump sent to Mr. Byrd White, the third Cabinet Secretary of West Virginia Department of Transportation, that we had asked him to communicate with Mr. Byrd regarding the Berkeley Springs Train Depot Interior Rehabilitation Project, which has been ongoing for many years. Transportation Alternatives Grant was awarded on the project, 2016. It's my understanding that the Division of Highways needs to issue a notice of proceed for the project to move forward. This project is very important to economic development here in Berkeley Springs and Morgan County, and has my full support. I would be very grateful for anything that the Division of Highways might do to get the project moving forward. Thank you so very much, Sincerely, Charles Trump. So, whether or not,
Right.
and whether or not, if it's going on to the feds, then these guys need to know we still care.
Right,
So
we're-
please get the feds to.
Absolutely, send it on to them and say,
So-
get off the tail end here, so.
Did a letter into them, and so they
deal.
have responded.
Can I
Okay.
get a copy of that, Susan, for the
Sure.
file?
Sure. Oh, yeah, I just got this today, and I didn't have a chance to send it on or anything, so.
All right,
you can have
Landmarks.
that. You can have
Oh,
it.
I can have that.
Yeah, yeah.
Landmarks Commission, basically right now, kind of on hold with that, so we'll discuss that at a later date once we get our ducks in a row. Clerk and Recorder's Report, Madam Clerk, do you have anything?
The only thing I had was a budget revision. We have to always correct our balances to match the bank statements. And we do have a small reduction in the unassigned funds, so we're going to reduce that by $2,247. And we're just going to increase one of the other budget lines by that, so it will not change the total bottom of the budget line. I will have to send something into the West Virginia State. I did get answer on that this afternoon, but I haven't done that for your presentation here.
We have to sign off on this one?
Yes, so you have to
We did
approve it
last
for me,
time.
yes.
Okay, and it's called unassigned funds.
Yes.
Okay.
The account under 299.
I didn't think it was that small figure, but it's gotta be exact, you have to be exact.
Yes.
Yeah, we got,
2247.
All right.
okay, Madam Recorder.
Okay, well, I don't have anything recorder wise, but Rick, you're gonna read the bills, for me. He's gonna start the bills, he's gonna
Okay.
make the motion, I'm gonna second.
Town of Bath bills for the current month, $10,889.46. And we would go ahead and pay those bills on the town of Bath.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second on the floor to pay the town of Bath, bills in the amount of $10,889.46. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Turkish Springs Waterworks, current bills totaling $11,712.25. Make a motion to go ahead and pay those bills on behalf of the Waterworks.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to pay the Berkeley Springs Waterwork bills in the amount of $11,712.25. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Next up, Greenway Cemetery, monthly expenditures, $3,245 even. Let's move and go ahead and pay those on behalf of the cemetery.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to pay the Greenway Cemetery bills in the amount of $3,245. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, now we've got that done. Move on to the tree board. I don't think we've heard anything from the tree board. We have a new representative. Yep. We have a new representative, so hopefully we can get an update next meeting if possible. If not, the following meeting we'll figure it out.
Tomorrow's meeting, it's tomorrow at
Oh, it's
2:30.
tomorrow,
It'll be
yeah.
here in the.
You didn't miss it. Another meeting you have to attend.
The meeting will be here, Beth, but they're also going to set up a Zoom because they have a couple of people that they need to reach out to, so I'll send you the
Okay.
Zoom information also.
I'll just come to town hall.
Oh, what time is it again? 2:30.
Don't be late, your meeting.
Oh, boy. Okay, Grant, I know, Greg, you haven't had a chance to work on anything. I know Beth had let us know at cemetery that she's working on some things for Grant. I don't know if she wants to bring that forward or if you.
I don't need
Okay.
to do it tonight, but we do need to see if we can come up with we set times, really weekend times help, because then it's easier to remember to get to a meeting, so, you know, maybe we can think
Yeah,
about
we
that.
can get together and come up with a.
Yeah.
with a-
But your schedule is probably a lot more demanding than mine is, so if you wanna propose some days and times, you know, that would be fine.
Yeah,
with
he
me.
works for me for all that. He ain't worried about it.
Sometimes, I have a lot of deadlines, so.
Yeah.
This brother?
Yeah, we get the commercial insurance,
Just withdraw our support from it. He'll be good to you.
Okay, all right, well then, we'll be working, you guys have been working on that then behind the scenes until next meeting. Okay, public safety? Okay, everything good? Okay. Cemetery?
I think we pretty much covered everything this morning. Things are going fine.
All right, public works?
I talked with Vince Kidwell after the last meeting, letting him know we're gonna put a steel plate at that end once they do their sidewalk part. We haven't heard back from them, so I'm sure they've done absolutely nothing. It's saying it was and we looked, so we'll just wait on
We'll
it.
wait on them to call us.
I'll talk to Rodney and get some other next things on his list for the paving. I don't just wanna bump things up, I'd like to add some more things. Lord knows. But no, everything's good. Just leave it there.
All right. All right, ordinance, we got a few things
We
for
have some things
clean
to
up
clean
there.
up. Yes, we do. The first thing is, the second reading to rescind ordinance 2021-03-01. This is the ordinance that we passed and had a fee schedule that did not match the, tickets that the police currently are using, so we thought it best to, and were advised by our attorney to get rid of it. We did have the first reading at the last meeting, and so I make a motion that we pass for second reading the rescission of 2021-03-01.
Do I have a second?
One second.
Okay, we have a second, we have a motion second on the floor to rescind ordinance, it was 2021-03-01. Okay, to rescind, this will be the second reading, so we can rescind it. There was a few, mistakes on it, so we're rescinding that. Any discussion? Anybody have any discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
Now, since we have rescinded the bad one, we want to bring in the good one, and we do have it on the agenda this evening. And this will be the first reading of 2021-07-01. And this is special ordinance to amend Town of Bath Code 78-168, right and left parallel parking and angle parking. This is the same ordinance, except what I did was I actually had wording right from the ticket book as to what the fine should be. And any improper parking violation under this section will be considered a misdemeanor violation of Town Ordinance 78-488 with a fine of $15 if paid within 30 days of offense. Any improper parking violation under this section that is not paid within 30 days will be fined $30 and the vehicle will be voided. This is what's on the ticket. If there's anything that you all want to add or to, to that, and we will, this would be a first reading, and I make a motion that we accept it for first reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second on the floor for the first reading for ordinance 2021-07-01, amending the Town of Bath Code, right and left parallel parking and angled parking. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
please, for heaven's sakes, look at it, because we don't wanna pass it.
Yeah, we don't have to
like it again and go
rescind it.
through this again.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's the first reading, so if
Okay.
anybody sees anything on there, please bring it to next meeting because it's gonna be passed into law.
Yeah.
So,
The next thing I had on the agenda was, the meeting that we had with the Morgan County planner and, administrator on building permit procedure. We went over that a good bit this morning.
Right.
At finance, the choices, that we have, and it's gonna be a big deal, I think, for the ordinance committee to look at, because it's really
Absolutely.
choices with real, subsequent changes to ordinances and like this, and how we handle things. One choice is if we join with the county planning commission, and there's one from the community, and we go with them, and they, I guess, administer our building permits. The other is that we take what we already have as far as permitting and add that in the fees that we want to our subdivision permits. The county administrator was very adamant about, we would help with this, and I would, because this
Right.
is kind of complicated, and you're gonna get it right. And she explained how the county handles it, and, they seem to be doing okay with it, and, but I think it's a
Well,
good thing.
right.
That
we need to have legal advice in the weather, and then, of course, our other option is to just go ahead, kind of, get rid of the.
paying the whole thing.
Right, so, but we're gonna have to figure out whether or not,
Well, realistically, talking with Danielle, when we were doing the collecting the permit monies and all that, it was 200 a handful, and we're gonna spend more on that on legal fees to pursue this any further.
yeah,
The thing is for the assessor, and I don't know that we're required to go through this for this, the
for
county
the
assessor
value
comes in
of the houses that are being worked on.
if
I
there's
don't
a-
know that.
See, I'm
Right.
a little uncomfortable with the fact that the county says their attorneys looked at it, which is our attorney. But not, everybody's not quite comfortable with it, so why would we
Right.
embrace the same thing?
Right,
Um,
I'm not real comfortable. I
Our
don't either.
attorney's gonna be uncomfortable with it for us too.
So I think right now, I think, right now, we need to,
You seem to talk about the state of the code.
well, we can't do it tonight, but,
No.
we really need to look hard and long at what we want to do. Because it's gonna cost us a lot more in legal fees to go and determine whether we can put something under our subdivision versus our building permits at $200 to $250 a year. Is it really worth the trouble, and are we locked in? That is a very good question about the assessor's office. Are we required to have any upgrades or anything that's been done from the assessor's office? I know, so that's something we need to check into, and I will talk to the assessor's office and see if there is any type of requirement requiring us to turn all that in. If not, this council's gonna have to determine, is it really worth the $250 we get a year for all the headaches with the building permit? And that's one thing I think we need to look hard and long at.
Believe me, the assessor's office doesn't miss anything. They drive around here to find any kind of new construction.
Yeah,
and that,
yeah,
and
so,
they stop and visit.
Right, and it might be better, so
Trust me, I
let's
know.
put this on the agenda, for next meeting, just to, so we can discuss it, whether we want, how the council wants to go, whether you want to just kind of, think about it and bring it back to council the next meeting. And, we'll go from there, so,
Yeah, I would like to hear what Chris is thinking, because he's already done a lot of thinking about this.
next meeting, we'll bring it forward and we'll let our.
I'd like to
man
do a
Chris-
little more research.
Yeah, he's still working on it, yeah. I,
Smokes the
I'm giving him so much homework that he says, I don't know, so let's go ahead and table that to the next meeting.
The next meeting is next week.
It's
shoot,
next
yeah.
week.
Yeah.
You want to go to the following meeting so that you can prepare? Because I think there's going to be questions You want to go to the following meeting?
Thank you.
Go to that first one in September.
No,
No,
You look
no.
somewhere on the
Yeah, we can try, or-
second, not ready, we can table.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and put it on there. If you're not ready, we'll table to the following meeting. Right, sound good? Thank you. Appreciate it.
The only other thing that I put on there is the amendments in chapter 42. I'm thinking that, the ordinance committee is gonna have to look at that
Yes.
and really change it because it isn't right. I did send out the original, establishing ordinance that we passed in 2000, establishing the historic landmarks. So you'd have some kind of, well, what did they do
Right.
then? What did we do then, at that time? And so, and I kind of like to bring up a couple things a couple of these things that have drug on for a long time, like the building permits and
Right.
the state building code and this. We have to be very careful, and the ordinance committee has to be very careful of taking laws that are just handed to us.
Absolutely.
They have to be researched and they have to be honored, because understand, we're just like congressmen or people in Charleston and the state, nothing like this. People with lobbyists, people with their agendas will write up a law and
Right.
it will look real good and they'll hand it to you, and then you live with it for the next 5 years
Right.
and go through all kind of stuff that maybe wasn't necessary.
Now, like I
So
said, that
it's
was,
just a matter of being careful
right.
and what's good for us, not what's good for the guy handing it to.
Well, like I said, that was my fault. I took full responsibility.
No, I'm not
for it,
saying,
so,
I'm just.
that
We
was,
were all here
yeah.
raising our
Well, like I
hands too.
said, I'm the one that brought it forward thinking it was a good thing, and it was, I didn't know,
I don't think there was
so,
any ill intent.
no, it
but-
wasn't, but,
5 years later.
right, 5 years later, we're right here,
we're dealing with it,
so,
Now we're going back to the original.
yeah, so,
pretty much.
anyway, okay,
And that's all I've got.
okay, thank you, Waterworks,
I think I've taken up enough of this meeting, but our next, we will have our monthly waterworks meeting on August 2nd, Monday, this coming Monday. 4:30, Scott Murphy.
thank you, I appreciate that. All
That's
right.
all.
And next Tuesday, we've got ordinance at 4 and public works at 5.
Yay,
Woo!
yay.
All right, well, let's see here. This is at the point in time that I ask if there's anything else that needs to come before this council. tonight.
Nobody say a word.
If not now, forever hold your peace. I will take a common consent to adjourn.
So
Oh,
many.
there's a hand.
Oh, Mayor of Hancock wants to speak with
Yeah.
us.
I just want to let you all know that we have what we call National Night Out, and it's a national event for first responders, police officers. And several years back, what we did was we realized that Pennsylvania didn't have a National Night Out, and Berkeley Springs, Morgan County didn't have a National Night Out. So I got with my chief of police and said, we're all in the same area. Let's invite these guys over. And what it is, it's a big event that you can get a lot of information from companies that's out there, and things that are resources in the community, but more or less for first responders. So I just want to let you all know that's August the 3rd at 6 o'clock at Woodmire Park. There'll be kids events, things for kids to do, and then we have a great fireworks display at dark. So I invite any of you over there to enjoy that. I know the Morgan County Sheriff's Department, everybody's been invited. They need to bring some guys over and work as a team with us. I know a lot of times, our guys meet at the state lines, but, we kind of help each other. So it is very important for us to put everybody together and consider it a national night out, what it truly is with all three states. Another thing, I sit here and listen to your all's water. I am, as a new elected mayor, but I sit 14 years on city council with water supplies. And it all sounds very, very familiar. I'm glad you brought up about annexation, because that is one thing that counties tend to forget. That it's great to put water lines, it's very good to put them, but it's some point somebody makes money off their water. So in reality, it's great to put all the water lines all the way into the end of the county, but annexation is one way that the town can actually recoup off of
Right.
that, because that's where the money comes back. I don't know, for Hancock, that's where the bulk of our money and our income comes from, is water. I will tell you, when they say no rates, if you're gonna put a new system in, you're gonna have a hike in rates. Because what that is designed for, and I'm going through it right now, is you reach out to all the resources and you say, okay, I need this much money, I need this much money. Everybody comes back and they say, okay, we give you 80%, we give you 50%. At the end of the day, what they wanna know is how that money is getting returned over the course of 50 years. And I'm looking at it right now and I'm thinking to myself, how do you ever get into this situation? So we are looking at a 7% increase because we have to put a new wastewater treatment plant in. And we annexed all the way 70 east, all the way to the north as far as we can go. You can't go south, we're in the river. But look at that carefully, and you're going to do that and figure out. I just, in our study, we are pretty much completed, and that's where you'll find out everything that is going to be needed. It will tell you if you're going to need another plant, because if you are planning on 125 jobs at one company, you have to plan for what that 125 jobs is going to create for the water system. So, I deal with it with Blanco Penalty Cheese Factory. I'm running more yards over the PA just because it's annexed in the town limits. But I also had to realize that it's a cheese factory. So I got to know what's coming in there, what's getting discharged, what's going through my water. Just to make sure that the cost, for them is affordable, but also for the town. RK&K Engineering, they do West Virginia. I would reach out to them. They are phenomenal. They will do a step, phase by phase program for you. But he is right. Now is the time for any kind of water system like this. Is the time because of all the federal money and everything that's out there that you can love water. But if I was you guys, I would just take it slow, get the study. I would definitely push for annexation, because you're always going to pay for the study. Okay, but who the money comes in? County does. So it's good for the people in town that already have water, but they need to know that they're not paying for the next people that's on the water. You got water on out there, they're paying the bulk of it. So just kind of make sure that you're not getting a hike on the one side, because it's going to come down to eventually it's going to be a cost. So when you pay for that study, those studies can be expensive. And if you got to put a new system in, we started at $8 million and now we're at $18 million. So
Was that company that made the presentation the meeting I was there the one night, was that the company you're talking about that was giving you they had the slide presentation that night and everything? That was the company.
RK&K, and what they'll do is they do all your P&R study and get everything drafted, and then it tells you step by step, everything that you're going to need in phase one, what you're going to need in phase two, and then at the end, what is going to come out of it. But if you're looking at that kind of influx in water, and what people's going to be getting onto, at the end of the day, they can, have the water and they can utilize it, but at the end of the day, you want to be able to say, okay, well, if we're giving $50,000 for PR study, we're spending $50,000 for what?
Right.
To put a water line so the county can get money off of. Right. So how about incorporating some of the bigger businesses into the town so that the town can take advantage of that tax rate and recoup their money back?
Yeah,
That's
that's why I brought that point up.
That's where the money comes from. It's all businesses.
Can you get me that?
Yeah.
Text it to me tomorrow so I can go to the water
Yep.
committee so they can determine what to do from there. Thank you. That's all right. We'll get ready to go. Okay, anything else? If not, common consent.
Bang that gavel.
We're done. Hey, Tim, are you going back the right way?